Good night, everyone. I have to thank Mr. Chairman for doing such a wonderful job of introducing me. And I want to say a special good night to the members, the persons who live in Brittons Hill. It's so great to be in Brittons Hill. And I say this because Brittons Hill is actually where I started my journey as a person. I remember growing up in Mission Gap, and we would often walk this way to go to school, and also to go to the doctor, Dr. King, not far from here. And we had friends who lived here, so we'd often pass. So for my entire life, I have lived in St. Michael South. St. Michael South is home. From attending Bay Primary and walking the different streets throughout the neighborhood, to picking tambourines and going to church at Dalkeith Methodist Church, not too far from here. So when I talk about St. Michael South, I talk with passion, and I talk about a place that is very near and dear to my heart because this is the only constituency that I have ever known. When I talk about St. Michael South, I talk about low-income households. I talk about persons with low-income jobs. We're now, in 2018, we find ourselves with such a ridiculously high unemployment rate. Where in 2018, St. Michael South has found itself with an inadequate representative, so inadequate that he has allowed and enabled for 2 persons in one household in St. Michael South to be unemployed at the same time. We talk about persons in St. Michael South barely being able to make ends meet. Parents having to try to figure out and do the math to see which bill they should leave unpaid, hoping that the bill won't cut off before they get another cent. We talk about persons who believe that education created a situation that would end the cycle of illiteracy within our constituency. Persons who believe that education would open doors and allow for just one person in a household to pave the way forward for an entire family, for siblings, for grandparents, for single mothers, for fathers, for abusive households. We talk about a constituency where education, since independence, matter of fact, we talk about a country, because we're no longer simply education, has brought Barbados so far, and so many individuals have benefited from education within Barbados. So when we speak about education and the drastic changes that we have seen where dreams have been snatched from before our eyes, we are talking about a country that has a government that has forgotten their roots. And now it gets personal for me. Because when I talk about education, in my family, both of my parents have low-income jobs. And I just want to say for anyone who might believe otherwise that low-income jobs do exist. And low-income households do exist. So Barbados must be a country that caters to persons who have low-income jobs and live in low-income households, barely making less than $300 a week. As such, when I talk about low-income jobs and a mother and father who found themselves unemployed, as a person who was set on going to university to move my family forward, propel my family forward, when the call came that education had been raised, that we had to contribute 500% more than we previously contributed the last year, you could imagine how my heart fell through the floor. You can imagine how I tried to figure out how I would continue going to school. So it came as no shock that I would leave school the next semester. And I would find myself home and unemployed. Because as a young person, if you thought it was hard to get a job before this government, you ain't seen nothing yet. We don't get hired because if we have to go to school, persons don't want to make provisions for us. We don't get hired because if we want to go to school, persons are not willing to pay persons who have no experience Because the conundrum is that you have to have 5 years of experience, but you have to have a job for 5 years to get the experience. So at the end of the day, you are back exactly where you started. So I was home. I was unemployed. My mother was home. She was unemployed. My father was home. He was unemployed, like many persons in St. Michael South. And the interesting thing is, whether or not you are employed or unemployed, the bills keep coming like clockwork. And the taxes keep going up, and the food items keep going up, and we can't decide whether or not gas should go up or come down. And weird enough, well, everywhere in the world gas has gone down. In Barbados, it keeps going up. Moreover, the duties in the poor are ridiculous, to say the least. And let's not talk about how many small businesses have shut down and how many young persons have found themselves unable to sustain themselves because of high taxes and a hard time starting a business in Barbados. And then I met Kirk. I met Kirk, Mr. Kirk Humphrey, when I was so hopeless. When I saw everything falling, when I was trying to figure out whether or not I would ever go back to school, or if I should go back to school or keep the hunt going. And then I heard his story and realized that he wasn't so different from myself. Because a lot of times in Barbados, politicians seem to sit on this pedestal. So they don't come from low-income households. We don't think that. And we don't think that they had to struggle to go to school just like us. And we don't believe that they had to worry about the things that we had to worry about. And then I started to pay attention. And when I spoke to him, he made me realize that politicians can be genuine, that politicians can be honest, that they can have integrity, that they can know what it means to want to help persons. That some politicians, instead of playing politics and staying silent and ignoring their communities for years, just like St. Michael South, that some politicians do not forget, that some politicians are willing to go above and beyond for their constituents and won't just come around at election time and start to hand out money, hoping that it all gets them a vote. That some politicians go beyond the vote, beyond the politics, and start to talk to the people. So that's when I met Mr. Kirk Humphrey. And then I started to think once again. And I realized that the same government that took away education needed that education to get them where they are today. That they lived in the same kind of, some of them lived in the same kind of house that I live in. That they walked through the same neighborhood and had the same struggles, and that without the education system that Barbados has had for the longest time, since the beginning of its identity as an independent nation, that they used it to get them where they were. And I can't understand why they would believe somehow that it stopped being a right and it started to be a privilege, and ignore the fact that so many communities in Barbados still need it. So many young men deserve more than the bushing jobs. So many young men deserve more than to be carted off to jail, as they would suggest, for 25 years for a system that has failed them. So many parents in St. Michael South deserve more to see their sons carted off to jail for a system that never gave them a chance and forgot about them as they gain weight, as they sit in Parliament, and as they stand on our national TV and talk about how our sons and our daughters deserve their skulls cracked and call them demons. And when they don't fix the system because they decide somehow that renaming schools makes it much better. So we deserve more than superficial representation. And when I talk about superficial representation, I talk about riding around on a truck just before election time. And the fact that roads in St. Michael South have gone unpatched for years. But all of a sudden now, they're getting patched. We see it. We talk about we deserve more than flooded houses and fallen streets in St. Michael's South. We deserve more than overgrown play parks. Thank goodness for Mr. Kirk Humphrey, because Jessamine get fixed. We deserve more than poor housing in this community. And some persons in this community deserve to have been placed in the grotto. Because I can't understand how you build a housing project in an area and hardly anybody from St. Michael's South get placed in there, and many of them live in bad housing with children. So we need to have the conversation there. Perhaps if he woke up, he could talk to us. We deserve more than dismal drainage and flooding in St. Michael's South. We deserve it. Our young men and our young women deserve more. Our parents deserve more. Our constituencies deserve more. Our history, our legacy deserves more. We deserve more than silence. We deserve more than condescending statements. We deserve more than Facebook Lives making a mockery of situations of persons across the island. We deserve real conversations. We deserve genuine engagement. We deserve, as the people of Barbados who elect governments to sit for us and representatives to speak in our best interest, we deserve for them to do that. And what I am saying tonight, because I won't go on too long, I eagerly await the presentations from the representatives of St. Michael and definitely from the next MP of St. Michael's South, Mr. Kirk Humphrey. So I close by saying that we deserve more. And as Barbadians, as persons who have grown here, as persons who have contributed, who pay taxes, ridiculously high taxes to say the least, we deserve to make a stand whenever election is called. And you be sure that election will be called, because somebody has to call it. I ain't know who, because I ain't sure who it's supposed to be, but somebody has to call it. And when it is called by whoever chooses to speak, when it is called by whoever chooses for some reason to have a voice, because the voice has been lost, probably forgotten, similar to how the representative seems to have forgotten that his constituency is here and our issues. When it is called, we deserve to take what we want and who we want. We deserve to place X's. We deserve to place our X's, and we need to place our X's for persons who have never taken us down economic despair. For persons who have shown time and time again that they are willing to listen. And in St. Michael's South, since we deserve representation, we deserve a man like Mr. Kirk Humphrey that says people over politics. We deserve, and he deserves for us to put our X next to his name, because Mr. Kirk Humphrey will take St. Michael forward instead of leaving us where we are. Mr. Kirk Humphrey will propel our young people, and he will give them hope for tomorrow, because we have lost it. And we need to talk about hope in Barbados. So tonight I close by saying, if you want hope, when you talk about a future, when you talk about your children, when you talk about Barbados going on, you have to talk about the Barbados Labour Party and the St. Michael's South. We must talk about Mr. Kirk Humphrey. Vote Kirk.